Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the ESG Show. Today it is episode 14, and our theme today is diversity, the business case for diversity, and how to bring the S to life, the silent S, and how this plays into governance. I need to get an apology in first. I'm just recovering from COVID at the moment. So if my voice is a bit croaky or I suddenly start coughing, don't worry, I'm on the mend. But apologies in advance should that happen. We recently, this week, we did a survey which relates to this show. What is the key reason why diversity is beneficial for organisations? And by far and away, the most popular response was because it enhances creativity and innovation, and broader talent and adaptability. Got a respectable just over a third of the votes. Improved reputation and image. No one thought that was an issue, and it's not. 3% of people didn't think diversity is beneficial for the organisation. And we also had some comments which will appear on the screen in just a moment when the cursor does its job. Or maybe not. If those questions suddenly appear on the screen, I shall read them to you. But in the meantime, we'll push on. So, here they are. Right. Excuse me while I lean forward to be able to read this. Rahul said, diversity is indeed a strength in today's... Hold on just a second. I'm struggling to read this. It's indeed a strength in today's globalized business world. Providing solutions requires a broader understanding of the problems faced, for which diversity plays a key role. People are experienced in solving problems at a localized level, and it grasps. I'm so sorry. And if groups of such people are does that say male? The experience factor multiplies, therefore presenting solutions that multiple issues cast across geography. Nani Hurley says, very good question, Michael. I think diversity is good on so many levels, and enhancing creativity and innovation is a good example of how diversity can be beneficial. We live in a diverse world, and bringing such diversity into our business is the best way to have a company that's aligned with its customers, community and employees. I also strongly believe that a diverse team is not only better at coming up with new ideas and solutions, but also more capable of taking decisions that consider different angles and bring long-lasting results. Okay, so that was our survey. I'm sorry I struggled with writing there. The text was so small on my screen, I was barely able to read it. I needed a telescope to read some of that. So as I'm getting on a little bit in years, which is probably why I struggled to read the writing just now, somebody asked me, well, what's your wisdom then? What's your wisdom of your life? What have you learned? To which I replied, my wisdom is that I don't think I have any wisdom. I don't think anyone is wise. And that very much includes myself. Now, I kind of cheated a little bit, really, because that idea that no one really has wisdom, I believe, was an idea introduced by the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. And there he is, the man himself. We're all of us, every single one of us, biased. We're all products of our childhood and the environment we grew up in. We take for granted views and concepts that people from other cultures might question. We take for granted views and concepts that our children and grandchildren might strongly disagree with when they are our age. I'm reminded of the movie Lincoln, making this the second week in a row, I think, in which I referred to a Steven Spielberg movie. There was one scene that always stays in my mind, and the scene in question involved a debate in Congress about giving the vote to every man, regardless of race and colour. But one wag from the House responded along the lines of, okay, so we'll give the vote to all men, regardless of colour. But let's just keep it at that, shall we? And then, with a twinkle in his eye, because he was about to say something funny, we don't want women voting, do we? And the comment led to everyone falling about with laughter, except, of course, the cinema's audience. The scene was just as funny, but for a quite different reason. The cinema's audience was laughing at the ignorance of these men from 150 years ago who found the thought of giving women the vote so absurd, and the merest mention of it caused unbound laughter. And that is what I mean. Attitudes and beliefs change. That which we considered ridiculous, absurd, laughably stupid, a generation or two ago, today is just accepted as normal. And in fact, it's considered strange and absurd to question it. But for people who experience these changing beliefs, it can be quite painful as they hold on to the views they were brought up to hold. I suppose it's a kind of cognitive dissonance. And that takes me to a phenomenon I believe is way more important than is generally understood. And that phenomenon is groupthink. It is well known and proven that groups can be super smart. They call it wisdom of the crowds, a concept that goes back to a Victorian mathematician called Francis Galton, I think, who observed visitors to a livestock fair taking part in a guess the weight of the ox competition. No one got it right, but Galton worked out that the mean average of all the guesses was pretty much spot on. And I'll give you another example. A crowd singing in a football match. If you're a fan of English football, you might be familiar with Liverpool Football Club and the Kop, which is perhaps the most emotional things in football, really, when they're singing the song Walk On. Now, one thing always puzzled me about that. How did all these thousands of people manage to sing so in tune? I can't sing in tune. I'm a rubbish singer. And then someone explained it to me. Most of the fans were as bad at singing as I am. Some sang too high, some sang too low, some a little behind the beat, and others a little before. But these errors cancelled each other out. On average, they sang beautifully. And that is the thing about group intelligence, or the crowd. We call it collective intelligence in a metaphorical sense. It sings beautifully. But there's also a thing called madness of crowds, which has a close cousin, groupthink. And groupthink is everywhere. We're all victims of it. The classic example goes back to the 1960s when the US president was JF Kennedy, and he thought he could create an uprising in Cuba, known as the Bay of Pigs disaster, and all his advisors were just victims of groupthink. They got it horrendously wrong. There was no chance of such an uprising. And I see it every time I read comments on a YouTube video. I do force myself to occasionally watch videos expressing views I disagree with. It can be uncomfortable viewing, but no matter how foul and disturbing the views expressed, those that comment invariably agree. And I find it quite depressing. I watch some idiotic journalist making absurd arguments about climate change that a child could see through. And then I read all these people agreeing with them. And occasionally, in a fit of rage, I had a comment myself, but it's so hard not to resort by insulting people who agree with this rubbish. Anyhow, there's also a concept called group polarization. Groups tend to exaggerate the average view held in that group. Mildly risk-averse individuals who get together and form a group are paralyzed by indecision. And a group of mild risk-takers becomes insane gamblers. I think those concepts carry through into other areas. A group of individuals mildly cynical about climate change become total gainsayers who assertively argue it is nonsense. A group of mildly aggressive people can become massively violent, and a group of people who feel mildly uncomfortable about mixing with people of different races can become obnoxiously racist. And of course, it applies the other way around too. As a rule, people believe that which supports the narrative they support, and if facts say otherwise, they apply extraordinary mental gymnastics to ignore those facts. Groupthink terrifies me. I believe it is the stuff that wars are made of, and I believe it could bring down human civilization. It can also be disastrous for companies. And one of the topics that especially interests me is disruptive technology. I see a parallel here. Groupthink can be so embedded into an organization that it is totally unable to respond to a new technology or idea. And for me, right now, there are disruptive forces at play that can rip the fabric from both the corporate world and from society. These forces include climate change, the revolution in renewables, technologies such as AI and technologies to follow, such as gene editing. And to meet the above challenges, we need the crowd, that is humanity, to be as smart as possible, and we need to overcome groupthink. And that is why I believe in diversity. To put it simply, I think it is the antidote to groupthink. Anyhow, so enough from me. Let's introduce today's guests. And today I'm joined by Cheryl Cole.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Michael. Can you hear me okay? I'm good. I'm good.
Good. So Cheryl says that she is passionate about all things to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion. The underappreciated S in ESG would be an understatement. Until last month, she was founding editor at diversityq.com, a platform dedicated to helping organizations improve their DEI. She spent 25 plus years in journalism and corporate communications. Now she's on a new journey of discovery and looking forward to kickstarting it all today. So Cheryl, you're passionate about diversity. Do you think people are more sympathetic to diversity these days, or is it still an uphill battle, do you think?
I feel like that's a loaded question, but you know what? In all honesty, Michael, it's a mixed bag. I've spent the majority of the last 5 years supporting people and organizations who firmly believe in having diversity within the business. And, you know, following the murder of George Floyd, awareness of the injustices towards people of color in all aspects of their life became something that society and corporations could no longer agree. So there was a huge outpouring of support and pledges for organizations to do better, and DEI professionals around the world were swamped with requests for their help. And a lot of the requests were really well-meaning and intentional. But fast forward to today, 2 years on, and the issue is those organizations didn't really understand what it was about their DEI within their businesses that they needed to fix. At the time, they were just looking for solutions that were going to help them look good, unfortunately, and challenged what they thought was going on. Having not looked at it properly, those quick fixes didn't really do the job. They weren't the Phillips that they expected them to be. So we've now seen a lot of people scale back or stop doing their DEI activity, thinking that it's made no difference, or it's no longer a priority, or instead they want to focus on things where they've got a really easy to measure ROIs. At the same time, you've got organizations or people that believe diversity doesn't work. You know, they think if their business is not broke, why do they need to fix it or change? And we've also seen a rise in anti-woke sentiment and others who view some of the DEI initiatives that have gone on as reverse discrimination. So it's a mixed bag.
Right. Okay. Well, I look forward to discussing some of those issues with you again in a minute. And sorry for loading my question. Also on the show today is Renee. Is it Renee or Renee?
It's Renee, but it's okay. No worries, Michael. Hello.
I have another question. Is it Renee Wagner, as in Richard Wagner, the American actor, or Wagner, the composer?
It's Wagner. It's from German, but it's okay. No worries.
No, we'll call you. Well, I probably won't call you by your surname again anyway. But Renee Wagner. So Renee is an expert with passion coming from the international hospitality field, having worked for a French multinational hospitality company for several years in the ESG field. She says, diversity for me is just a word, because every human being is diverse from everybody else, no matter his, her sexual orientation, age, religion, thinking, etc. Unfortunately, there are still far too many barriers in people's minds instead of accepting each and everybody as he, she is. So, diversity is just a word, but do people understand it, do you think?
Unfortunately, I don't think that they do understand it yet. I think diversity is much more than about gender or race or sexual or religional orientation. It's also about diversity of background and of mindset. And if we want to have diversity, if we want to live diversity, if we want to discuss diversity, we should all be bringing people to work and together who are not like us, and having in mind as well that achieving diversity, it's not an easy topic. So curious about the discussion today.
Okay, well, so am I, and hopefully so are our millions and millions of viewers right now. Also on the show today is Sascha. Sascha, again, I'm going to have to check the pronunciation. Is that Dalig? Have I said that correctly?
In German, I would say Dalig. It's a bit slower there, but Dalig
is
fine for me. Hello, Michael. My pleasure to be with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here, Sascha.
Thank you very much.
Sascha is a regional director for Wyndham Hotels based out of Germany in Hanover. He is responsible for approximately 120 franchise hotels representing 9 different brands. Besides this role, he's also an examiner of the Chambers of Industry and Commerce and part of the experts group, which lead the renewal of apprenticeships in Germany. He says, diversity for me is key to success in teams, whether it is age, sex, handicaps, or origin. Every human being is bringing value and great new views. Gender equality is something worth fighting for, even though it is an ultra marathon. So, Sascha, are we winning this ultra marathon, do you think?
Very simple answer. We have to. I don't believe we did yet, but we have to. And for me, it's a common effort to win this race in order to secure our businesses, because I deeply believe this is what it's all about. The world's population needs for me to understand themselves as one humankind and stop thinking in borders, whether it's on maps or in minds. And to what Renee just said, the mindset is a very interesting part. And I was just about to come back to your opening poll, Michael, where you had this one question which was rated with 0, if I'm not mistaken, the reputation and employer branding of diverse teams, which is highly interesting, because I was just reading a quote last week from a German activist and influencer. He's been bonded to a wheelchair. His name is Raul Krauthausen, and he's quite active on LinkedIn as well. And he said, and it was interesting because it comes to mindset, he's not being fixed or bonded to a wheelchair. This wheelchair allows him to be enabled to go everywhere he wants to. And I believe this is really what mindset is about. How do we see things, how we talk about things? He's not bonded to this, but he's enabled with it.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for those comments, Sascha. We now turn to that part of the show when we take a look at a couple of news items. And there's this piece. We saw this piece. Everything you need to know about the Thomas Straker controversy. Thomas Straker controversy. Cheryl, what's this story all about?
Yeah, so restaurateur Thomas Straker, I think it is, has been busy recruiting his team in Notting Hill and recently shared a snapshot of his new recruits on Instagram, featuring 2 pictures depicting an all-male, all-white team standing in a military-style lineup with arms crossed. And the picture was captioned, "Chef Team Assembled." So at first glance, this image raises concerns that Straker might have inadvertently fallen into the trap of affinity hiring, which is basically hiring in your own likeness. So reflecting a stance of disregarding diversity or displaying ignorance about contemporary social norms. And after posting the images, he received a significant backlash, which is probably understandable given the context. So Straker's restaurant has been set up in an exceptionally diverse community situated in one of the most economically disadvantaged parts, or one of the country's wealthiest boroughs in Notting Hill. So the absence of sensitivity towards the local community is apparent. It's another case of gentrification, basically. So in particular, it's really striking the restaurant is in an area that is really rich in Moroccan, Black, Spanish, Portuguese culture heritage, and it's also the home of the Notting Hill Carnival. But despite all this, Straker's chef team lacks representation. Lacks people of colour, lacks women. Basically, and excuse the pun, he's not serving his community. So after, rather than embracing humility and acknowledging the oversight, Straker came out as defensive. He responded by labelling women who raised value concerns as bitter and twisted, implying an excessive preoccupation with being socially aware. He even said in one post, "You're so woke, you don't even care." And then he went on to argue that his workforce boosts diversity with 40% of women and from 8 different nationalities. But what you're not realizing that those people are probably all behind the scenes doing I would say, the not so exciting roles within the business. And then he went on to attribute the lack of diversity in his leading team to the fact that there was a shortage in hospitality professionals. Go figure. Obviously didn't look that far. So he's since issued an apology. However, to me, this story acknowledges once again the prevalent trend where higher paying positions within organizations tend to be dominated by white men.
Interesting. Okay. Now look, Sascha and Renee, I'm sorry, I was going to ask for your comments on this, but I think we need to push on to the next story, which is Disney. Disney are often often referred to Disney and their rows in Florida with Governor Ron DeSantis. This time, the story is that he slashes all diversity and inclusion programs after he's handpicked a new committee. So in a way, it kind of was parallel to that previous story there. Renee, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think on one side it's a political discussion, and on the other side it's quite weird that we need to discuss on this on a political level as well, because normally, as mentioned already by Cheryl before and by Sascha as well, we are all one and there shouldn't be any discussion on it. And as Ron DeSantis wanted to raise, he wanted to prohibit teaching about sexual orientation, gender identity in the kindergarten and in the first 3 years of primary school. It's completely absurd for a company as Disney, who is living from its cultural life and producing films and comics that are completely diverse. We are now discussing if they are right, if it's right to mention them. So it's absolutely weird on my point of view.
Fascinating. Sascha, any thoughts about that? Does Ron DeSantis have a point, do you think? Is Ron DeSantis your hero?
As Renee said, it's highly political, but from my point of view, no, he has no point in slashing all diversity activities. For what? Unfortunately, and if I do see it on a wider scope, and this is seen throughout many countries and governmental parties these days worldwide, we do have this trend back to the so-called good old times, which is for me not easy to understand. Those times were not purely good if we really dive into it. So what are those people with this backset mindset are really thinking for? Things have evolved over time, so have we. We gained a lot of understanding, new insights, and we have to navigate through all of this. And with going a step back, we're not even able to move a step ahead. I believe deeply, and we cannot expect, for instance, our wives to stay at home, being moms, having the dinner ready when daddy is coming home. This is totally against all equality and what we have achieved over the time. We need to work on this equality of people, whether it's mindsets, whether it's sexual orientation, or sex itself and gender itself. So therefore, no, he has no point in slashing all these activities, in my point of view.
Okay, all right, thank you. Look, this next thing, I want to cover this really quickly because we've gone way over, which is my fault. I was watching, one of my favorite movies is the movie Jungle Book from Disney. And I sat down to watch it a couple of years ago, and I was extremely surprised to see a disclaimer appear. This program includes negative depictions and or mistreatment of people or cultures. These stereotypes were wrong then and are wrong now. Rather than remove this content, we want to acknowledge its harmful impact, learn from it, and spark conversations to create a more inclusive future together. Disney is committed to creating stories with inspirational and aspirational themes that reflect the rich diversity of the human experience around the globe. To learn more about it, blah, blah, blah. So I was shocked by that because I thought, Jungle Book? Really? Sure, that's just an innocent movie about a child living with wild animals and songs and everything. What could possibly be offensive in that? But maybe I'm a victim of my environment. Maybe I'm not seeing the bigger picture here. Cheryl, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, as a child, you might not have really understood what was going on within the movie, you know, the references, but this disclaimer is really important because it brings to light an important aspect of media and cultural representation. You know, there are a lot of innuendos within the movie that as an adult you completely understand that they are prejudicial, racial discrimination. And no one is born with prejudices or biased against others. You know, we're all, as you said earlier, Michael, we're all products of the families and communities and societies that we grow up in. And when Jungle Book was written, it was aimed at children whose innocent minds are going to accept the negative depictions and mistreatment of people or their cultures as the norm. So while they're watching it, while it might have been created with intention to entertain and uplift, it's important to recognize that the media, even seemingly innocent content, can carry these underlying messages that influence our perceptions and belief. So for me, the disclaimer reflects a growing awareness in society that content from the past may contain really negative stereotypes, may contain biases, may contain cultural inaccuracies that perpetuate harmful ideas and existing prejudice and perspectives. So I'm happy that that Disney decided to do the disclaimer. It acknowledges that the film does contain content that's out of date and problematic, and I think what Disney's trying to do is to promote an open conversations and critical thinking about these issues. They, you know, they're not, their intention is not to erase these films from history, but rather to engage with them in a way that fosters really positive dialogue and growth, ensuring that media better reflects the society that we live in today. And I'll give you another quick example because I know we're running out of time. If you think about history that you're taught in school, when were you ever taught about the positive achievements of people of colour, you know, the global majority? You weren't taught about all the great inventions, the scientific discoveries, the academic achievements that these people brought to society. So if you think about that, I think what Disney's trying to do is just right some of the wrongs.
Yeah, indeed. I actually did a course. I'm looking for it now. I've got the book somewhere on my bookshelf. But when I was at university, I did a book and we actually covered the history of Africa in that course. And I was really astonished at some of the very ancient civilizations that were going on thousands of years ago. I thought it was really interesting, and we certainly don't hear about that. Okay, now just quickly mention, every week we run out of time to do questions for you, our audience, justice. So what we're going to do this week is that the four of us are going to stay on after this show. We're going to answer your questions, and then we're going to put that up as a recording a short while after the show. So don't be upset if we don't deal with your question. We will be coming to it. Okay, Cheryl. Now I'm just going to have a short chat with Cheryl on the business case for ESG. So Cheryl, is diversity good business?
Oh, you know what I'm going to say about that, don't you? Well,
Really,
yeah,
I can't imagine.
you can't imagine, no, but yeah.
No
So
idea.
diversity, it isn't just a buzzword. It's a powerful catalyst for business success. You know, in a world of constantly evolving markets and global connections, even though some people are trying to shrink those connections, embracing diversity isn't just the right thing to do. It's a strategic imperative. Businesses thrive when they draw from a wide range of perspectives and experiences and backgrounds. Diverse teams bring a wealth of creativity and innovation. We saw that in the poll. That's what people believe, and it's actually what's happening. You know, when individuals with different viewpoints come together, they spark fresh ideas, solutions. They can revolutionize products and services, which is usually important. Diversity enhances customer understanding. A diverse workforce actually reflects the customer base that you're trying to attract, allowing companies to connect more deeply with their markets and hopefully tailor their offerings more effectively. So equally, diverse workforces foster greater employee engagement and satisfaction. Employees are more likely to perform at their best when they feel valued and included, leading to higher retention rates, increased productivity, less money spent on hiring and exits. So diverse teams, for me, excel. They excel at problem solving. When you think about the variety of approaches and insights that come from diverse perspective, it enables companies to navigate challenges, I think, more adeptly. So embracing diversity isn't just a moral obligation, it's a strategic advantage. It harnesses the power of different backgrounds and viewpoints. Businesses unlock innovation, they connect better with customers, boost employee performance, and tackle challenges more effectively. So it's a formula for not just only a stronger bottom line, but also a brighter and more inclusive future for everyone. And when I talk about everyone, I do mean everyone.
Even me.
Even you, even white men who sometimes I feel might feel as though we're against them. We're not. It's about everyone.
Even white men who are recovering from COVID.
Even white men coming from COVID.
Okay, well that's good. That's good to know. But Cheryl, everywhere I look on the internet, I just see resistance to this idea all the time. Not everybody likes the idea of diversity at all. Are diverse teams? So we need to counter that, I think. So are diverse teams smarter? Do you think?
I think the way the outcomes from diverse teams are definitely smarter. So yes, they're smarter and more innovative. When a team is composed, I should say, of individuals with varied backgrounds, experience, and perspective, collectively they possess a broader range of knowledge and problem-solving approaches. You're all going to come at something differently, so you're not going to get the same outcome every time you try to do something. So different viewpoints can lead to more comprehensive discussions and deeper exploration of solutions, I think. Research also shows that diverse teams tend to be more creative and better at problem solving because they consider a wider range of options and perspectives. They challenge what you were talking about earlier, the conventional thinking, and prevent groupthink, leading to, I think, better, more stronger, robust decisions. But for you to really realize the benefits of diversity, you have to make sure that you're having an environment that is really inclusive and respectful of everyone's contributions. People must feel valued. They must be properly communicated with, and the management of diversity must lead to improved outcomes. So having a culture that encourages open dialogue and collaboration among team members from various backgrounds is crucial if you really want to make it work.
Okay, but what about hard evidence? Is there any sort of any actual data to back this up?
There's so many, and McKinsey did a recent report on it, but the most cited report is on the benefits of DEI is actually the McKinsey report from 2015, Why Diversity Matters. And it looked into, I think, over about 366 public companies, the US and UK, and found that those in the top quartile for ethnic and racial diversity in management were 35% more likely to have financial returns above their industry mean, and those in the top quartile for gender diversity were 15% more likely to have returns above their industry mean. Equally, companies in the bottom quartile for both gender and ethnicity and race are statistically less likely to achieve above average financial returns. And in the UK, the report also found that greater gender diversity on the senior executive team corresponded to the highest performance uplift. For every 10% increase in gender diversity, EBIT rose by 3.5%.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, I know there are a lot of studies going into this, and I don't think we can have enough time to talk about them. But there are. There's one. Someone has done a mock trial, for example. There's other studies to show that diverse teams tend to be more creative, come up with better patents. I would urge you to, if you don't believe me, you need convincing. I'd urge you to Google these themes, and we will be putting links to some of these reports on the group. So thank you very much for that, Cheryl, and I'll see you again in a few minutes. So now Sascha and Renee are going to be having a short chat. In rehearsal, it took them 30 minutes to do that. I told them they've got to get it down to 7 minutes. Looks, guys, like you might have to do it even quicker than that. So I'm going to disappear. You've got 5.5 minutes starting from now.
Okay, Sascha, let's go. What are your connections to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
For me, it's the teams and the organization I'm actually working in and worked before, and I love it. Working in a global company and being able to connect to those teams all around the world is absolutely crucial for me to learn, to understand, and to see how people are, how diverse we are as humankind again, and very personal with friends of mine being from a different sexual orientation and being able to discuss topics which never ever touched me as an old white man. This helps me to understand.
It changes the point of view, and your focus is completely wider. Even if you're not thinking about it today, your scope is completely much more open to it.
And coming back to the point that we had earlier, Renee, with the guy with Raoul Krauthausen being in a wheelchair, thinking of hospitality as an industry. Why don't we have a receptionist in a wheelchair? Why not? It is possible. So it's quite easy to have these guys being there, fully integrated, included in the hotel team. Why should not be a blindfolded person being my reservation agent? It doesn't care whether he or she could see or not, as long as he could record or she could record what the people are asking for. So there are so many possibilities. We just have to open up our minds and go ahead with it. And may I ask you, Renee, what would you think is one of the most important drivers then for diversity?
I think we need to include everyone. As you mentioned, if they are blind, if they're in a wheelchair, it doesn't matter, because everyone is able to do the same thing. And you could learn from them as well. They have another point of view that could be, or sometimes even facilitate your treatment. And why not taking them into your team and saying, okay, let's see it from a different point of view and carry on and learn even something new, because you do change your point of view. You do change your habits, and you learn to be more tolerant. And that's one of the main points as well, because at the end of the day, we are all equal. The only thing that is changing us, a part of our sexual orientation, gender, age, religion, whatever, is just our name.
Absolutely agree. And I do see a high level of intrinsic motivation in this whole group we're discussing today and within our bubble, Renee, where we are in. But what would you say, how can we get people contribute to diversity that are not intrinsic motivated? Do you see any possibilities there?
I'm convinced there's a lot of possibility in there, and there should be as well some there. And again, it opened your mind, it opened your focus, and everybody can learn from everybody if you're willing to and if you're tolerant to it. But what brings me to another question to you, Sascha, who is or who has, in your point of view, from your perspective, the main driver for diversity in teams?
Well, that's a quite simple answer. It has to be coming from the top management, from my point of view. And it cannot only be read from the lips, but it has to be lived each and every day in and out in an organization. Because just said words, just written words is one thing, but you have to live it actively. And as management, you have to make sure that this diverse approach is lived and fostered in this whole organization. It can't be only words written. It needs to be lived in and out. And company culture needs to be a driver to the values a company has. And if I put diversity and inclusion as my values, I have to make sure that I live it each and every day, that I respect people, treat them with the respect they need, and learn from them each and every day.
And it should be part of the company's DNA at the end of the day as well. It should be part and it should be lived, because
exactly. And there's a difference between a culture being written on a piece of paper and a culture being lived in an organization. So you have to bridge this gap as management and make sure that people do live these values and this culture each and every day to make it a better workplace for everyone, a better place to be for everyone.
Yeah. So do you think, or what do you think could be an advantage of having a diverse team?
Well, as you said earlier, it's learning from both sides, from my point of view, learning both sides of thinking. And when I'm just thinking, and this is what we've discussed yesterday in our 30-minute discussion, the different approach of men and women to different topics or the same topic, this helps a lot, sharing my ideas with a woman and then get back to my point and say, well, is my approach the right one or not? Really take this one step back, ask the question to someone else and see how he or she would work out a situation like this. And just a few days back, a friend of mine told me he was in a discussion with someone with a different sexual orientation, and he told her, well, for me, there's no point of why you're getting so upset when we're talking about it. And she was really upset. And she told him, you never know what has happened to me each and every day. And this is something that we would need to keep in mind when Cheryl just mentioned that, of course, all this diversity, all this inclusion is not only for black colored people, for gay people. No, it's for old white men like me as well. But we have to understand nobody's fighting against us. It's a fight together for humankind. What do you think in terms of not only advantages of those teams, but to the point that Cheryl and Michael just discussed, how do diverse teams benefit companies? Is there something that you would like to add?
I think it's creating and fostering diverse teams can as well improve the overall productivity, the cultural and the moral of the company as well. And as you mentioned, every individual has his own force, and in the whole team, you can create a lot of impact. And together you can reach your goal. Because if you're just working as an individual, you could raise the goals as well. But as a team, you can even learn about it. You can even learn more about it. And it's just like that you can be creative. And you learn to move out of your habits, of your learned attitudes. And isn't it lovely to learn something new?
It is. Indeed. Absolutely. We had a discussion yesterday and thought, and we are on the edge of the 5 minutes, Renee. I would like to ask you a quite tough question, but I think you're well prepared, so am I. If we would go into a retro perspective look, we are right now in the year 2030, so 7 years ahead of today, and teams are highly diverse. What has changed since now to get to this state?
I think we've learned and we've understood that as well, being tolerant makes life much easier, and that having a diverse team can facilitate in reaching your goals. And it's not only the company goals, it's as well your own human goals. But what is your point of view on it?
Wow. I like your point of view. I believe we understood the regular circle of changes that are happening to world, to life, to whatever is going there. And we understood that this is an investment in diverse teams, and understood that the different working times, as you just mentioned, and activities in different lifetimes of a human being, that this helps companies to further grow and to further evolve. And with this knowledge that we secured out of the different people in our organization, and we let them grow, we trained them, that work is not more listed in a work-life balance, but in a work-life organization, because there's no clear differentiation. So we are working and it's part of our life. And why should I diverse it completely from each other, bring it together and make it a good place to be? And we understood that working results are not full email inboxes or several hours spending on your desk, but the results of the role and the work itself. And this will help, from my point of view, drive diversity as times and places become second, and you can serve with them as hubs to reconnect with this whole organization.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. That was a really good conversation. We don't have much more time, but we have covered an awful lot of ground. I just wanted to say that diversity can also be difficult. There is research to say that social diversity in a group can cause discomfort. It can lead to rougher interactions, lack of trust. There's something called the Herfindahl, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, index, which says people living in the most diverse communities express less trust than others. That said, one of the reasons why I love London is because I consider it to be one of the most diverse cities in the world, and I think it makes it an amazing place. So what are the hurdles? What do we need to do to overcome this natural resistance, do you think? Anyone? Any volunteers to answer that question?
I'll start there, Michael. It's a case of broadening your network. I think it's a case of we all live with fear of the unknown, but the only way to overcome that is actually to try and be active, proactive in actually getting to know the unknown. So it's about educating yourself better. It's about actually trying to reach out to these communities, just talk to somebody who's different from you, learn about their experiences, their cultures, their way of life. And you don't have to live it, but if you learn about it, hear about it, understand it, you'll become less fearful. And then hopefully we won't have all this people walking around clutching their handbags, crossing the road, or being not understanding if someone speaks in a certain way or gestures in a certain way or makes certain comments that it's not going to be a negative thing. It's just about recognizing that to you, for them, you're equally going to be different, and the way that you behave and react is equally going to be possibly challenging. So it's just about taking the time. I know we're all busy, but taking the time to actually step back and try and learn about different cultures and different people and not judging.
And I would like to add to this, Cheryl, as we were just coming from the workplace and business perspective in the discussion before, we as organizations have to make sure that we have a workplace where everyone is feeling safe within this cultural environment. And what I just said in terms of values or company culture, this has not only to be a written word, but to be a lived word. And we do see a lot of companies putting diverse topics on their agenda, but is it really truly lived, whether it's in terms of applications where people are being ghosted after applying to a role just because of sending a picture out of their CV or whatever. So it has to be lived, and it has to be lived from the top management down all the way to each and every person in a company to have this workplace, where you're able to, what you just said, to learn about each other, learn about these different cultures and understand, because this is really what makes our lives brighter.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Look, we are out of time now, But we are going to be back in a couple of minutes on a recorded session where we're going to be dealing with questions and maybe cover a topic that we haven't had enough time to cover now. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Renee, Sascha, and Cheryl. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and see everybody next week.
Bye.
Bye.